Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden, but we're going to head up towards Gothenburg once again on the west coast, Göteborg as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital, and we're returning to a brewery who you've seen me review a good number of beers from already. These guys though are better known for their IPAs. I've had West Coasts, New England and Brut IPAs from them before, but if memory is serving me correctly, this is the first beer they've released through Systembolaget that is a stout, so quite an exciting one. I've also done a brewery visit for this brewery as well, and I reviewed one of their stouts there. I think it was a coffee stout though, so a little bit different, but it was very good, so I have very, very high hopes for this beer. For this review then, we are going to return to Spike Brewery for what I think is my maybe 6th or 7th review from them, and we're going to have a taste of the Aurora today, which comes in at 11% ABV. As I said, this is an Imperial stout, and it says on the can here it's an oak-aged Imperial blueberry vanilla stout, so really curious to see how this one turns out. If memory is serving me correctly, this was released on the 1st of December 2019 through the local and small sect assortment, and I think that this is the first stout beer they've released through Systembolaget, maybe even the first dark beer as well, although in January 2020 they have also released a porter, which you will see me review in a few videos time as well, because I really like trying the different things from these guys. But very, very curious to see how this one turns out. As I said, I was impressed with the stout I tried when I visited the brewery. You can check out that video if you search for it in the channel of course too, and we'll just need to see how we get on with this one, so let's see about that. So yeah, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Spike Brewery before. No doubt there will be some more at some point in the near future. Like I said, you'll see the porter soon and then more beyond that. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist to beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then. So as I mentioned to you already, Spike Brewery are based in Gothenburg, and they were founded back in 2014 by Mats Westberg, Marcus Axberg and Martin Johansson. Now all three of these guys had previously worked in the IT industry, but it's now only Mats and Marcus that are still active in the company, and they've now been joined by David de Surcy, who joined the company and became the CEO a little bit later on. So the brewer at the brewery is Bernardo Gava. He's originally from Brazil, and he trained in brewing at VLB in Berlin, but joined the company again a little bit later in 2017. At the moment they're producing around 250,000 litres of beer per year, and about 25% of their brewing volume is used for contract brewing other breweries' beers. I think Duck Pond, Mikrofondbryggeriet as they used to be called, brew some of their beers here at the Spike Brewery, and I forget who the other one is that brews some of their stuff there, but yeah, quite a few breweries are brewing under sort of contract and under as gypsy brewers basically out of Spike Brewery, which is pretty cool. But the brewery itself can be found in the Gamlestaden area, which is to the northeast of the main central part, and they've got an on-site tap room which opens up on Saturdays. That was when I filmed my little out and about video, and they also serve food in there as well. But they're looking at opportunities to build their own brewery at the moment, and as of January 2020 when I'm filming this review for you, they've got around 70 different types of beer that they've produced according to Untappd. Some of them are different vintages of things, because I think the Imperial stouts have been available for a little while in the tap room, but as I say, this is the first one that they've released through Systembolaget, and I think the recipe is a little bit different for this as well. But yeah, a very, very good brewery in my experience. I've had some really good IPAs from these guys over the last, I think it's 2 years or so that I've reviewed beers from them, so definitely one that you want to check out if you find yourself in Gothenburg. There's a great beer scene up there, and you know, if I was to move anywhere in Sweden, it probably would be to Gothenburg to be part of that craft beer scene. So yeah, that's all you really need to know about Spike Brewery for the moment. One of the really good breweries up in Gothenburg, as I said. If you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to see all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer and Untappd pages to see all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this one then. I'm really excited to try this, my first Imperial Stout review from Spike Brewery. So yeah, as I said to you at the start of the video, this one is an 11% Imperial Stout. There you can see on the side the Spike Brewery symbol, which is very, very nice. It comes in at 11% ABV, and they're describing it as an oak-aged Imperial blueberry vanilla stout. So I'm not sure whether they will have actually added the blueberries into this to make it a little bit tart, or whether it's going to be flavour essences and stuff that they've added into it. So it'll be curious to... I'm quite curious to see how it turns out in the aroma and things, because usually you can tell by the aroma. But look at the artwork on this. It's beautiful. That obviously I can attribute to, you know, the Nordic countries and things where you're often going to see Aurora Borealis and things like this. But this one, I believe there's been another version of this beer like a few years ago, either 2017 or 2018, and I think it was called Aurora Borealis or something like that, or Aurora Blueberryalis, something like that. So this one is basically a new recipe of this beer that's been released a little bit later on. So yeah, 440ml can, this one, so definitely a beer that you want to share. I can't remember how much this one cost me. I think it might have been 70 crowns, but I mean, for 440ml of a big Imperial Stout, that's pretty good going for Sweden, to be honest. So without further ado, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the taste, and then I'm really curious to see how this beer turns out actually. It's a nice beer to review on a Sunday afternoon when you've not got a lot to do. So yeah, look at that. It looks absolutely lovely. As I say, I like the artwork on this one. The Spike Brewery artwork, I think, is pretty damn good, I have to say. So yeah, as you can see, and as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, this one has poured a lovely dark kind of ebony rosewood colour. If I shine the light through this one actually does have a good little bit of that kind of Coca-Cola chestnutty coloured edge to it. There's a solid quarter finger of a frothy, quite dark tan head on that, but that's fading away in the middle to just be a very, very thin foamy layer. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass. There's a few little bits of sediment sitting there on the side of the glass as well, and you can see a few little bubbles just heading up towards the bottom of that head there. But I mean, overall it looks very nice. Nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. So yeah, let's have a look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. I'm really curious to see how this turns out. That's really nice actually. It's a lot more kind of dark and roasty and toasty than I was expecting. So maybe, you know, you can get a little bit of the tartness of the blueberries out of this, and a little bit of the vanillas in there too, but they're a lot more minimal than I was thinking they would be. I'm guessing then that they've probably added the vanilla and blueberries into the beer rather than using flavour essences and stuff like this. I mean, that's quite obvious straight away from the aroma. The only reason I said that, to be honest with you at the start, is because there's quite a few breweries making these dessert and pastry stouts these days that are using flavour essences, but this is definitely more of a kind of purist adjunct that they've put into the beer here, which is nice actually. So yeah, underneath all of that you definitely get a little bit of the blueberry tartness in there. On the fruity side of things, there's a little bit of a figgy, kind of raisiny plum kind of thing going on as well, but it's really the tartness of the blueberries just sticks out a little bit. The vanilla's in there. There's chocolate as well. It's quite a high percentage cocoa chocolate, maybe around 80%, 70-80% cocoa chocolate. The vanilla though that's in here gives you a little bit of an impression of some milky chocolate notes as well, but I think the chocolate generally is a little bit more of a higher percentage cocoa, to be honest with you, so more of a dark chocolate aroma the more you explore it, I have to say. I really like how that goes together. This is one of these stouts. This isn't one that jumps out the glass at you. I think this one's all about the different subtleties and things that you get out of it. But you know, when you've got a brewery like this, as I say, they do have a pedigree, a reputation for IPAs. I mean, when they're going to have a go at an Imperial Stout and release it for the first time, they're going to do it right, and you can tell that straight away from this beer. This is going to be a beast when we actually taste it. But yes, a nice blend of chocolate in there. It almost comes across as a little bit like a dusty kind of hot chocolate powder type chocolate as well, which is quite interesting. There's some woody undertones in there. The barrel aging, I have to admit, normally when you have a barrel aged Imperial Stout, it's a lot more obvious than that. I mean, what always happens with barrel aging is that the body will thin out a little bit and you get very infused aromas and flavours out of it. I don't find that to be all that obvious in here. You know, I mean, being Scottish, we had Innis and Gunn, you know, very early on in this whole craft beer movement thing. But with this beer, it's the barrel aging side of it isn't really that obvious. There are a lot of woody undertones to it, but it's, again, like I say, it's not the most obvious of barrel aged things. And there's definitely some brown sugar in here, and to me it comes across like quite a well fired brown sugar. But this is definitely one of the beers that's a lot more about subtleties and things rather than being very punchy in any one regard. I think this is one of these ones where a lot of the stuff is going to become more obvious in the flavour, to be honest with you. On the hoppy side of things, there's a nice little bit of earthiness there. It's quite a dark earthiness. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's maybe a little bit of an English hop in here, maybe some English Fugel or something, because the earthiness comes across as very roasty, but then again the fruitiness is a little bit more American. So I mean, it might be just simply Bramling's Cross or like Summit or Williamette or something from the States. Bramling's Cross, of course, is an English hop, and you've got Northern Brewer from Germany, which is used quite popularly in Doppelbocks and stuff. So yeah, the hoppy side of this beer, there is a little bit of remnants there, so I don't think it's been aged all that long, maybe 6 months or something. But yeah, it's a lovely smelling beer. That the more you smell of it, the more you're going to get some of the roasty black malty qualities out of the beer, and the woody smoothness kind of sits on top of that, but it's nowhere near as infused as some of the other barrel aged stouts and things that I've come across. But like I say, you've got a whole host of things going on here. Some lovely fruity notes, some really subtle woody, brown sugary and chocolatey qualities as well. The vanilla's there, the blackberries are there, or the blueberries rather are there. You can definitely pick out a little bit of them. So it's definitely one of the more subtle imperial stouts you're going to come across in terms of aroma, but there's nothing wrong with that, of course. So take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this beer before you get stuck into it, but we're going to have a taste of this one now and see how we get on. This one is the Aurora, an 11% Imperial Stout, to be specific, an oak-aged blueberry vanilla Imperial Stout from Spike Brewery in the Gamlestaden area of Gothenburg on the west coast of Sweden. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål. Yeah, it's definitely got a good bit more kind of punch to it in the flavour than it does in the aroma, and to me this is definitely one of the more roasty toasty stouts that I've had that's been barrel aged. And when it says oak aged, I noticed that it doesn't say specifically barrel aged, it says oak aged, so maybe they've just aged it and put like oak chips in it or something, because to be honest with you, in the flavour it doesn't really come across as being all that infused. So I've got a feeling that maybe this is one that's used oak chips rather than barrels, but who knows. And again, it's kind of given away a little bit by how roasty and toasty this is. This is definitely more of a kind of I don't know if you could say this is a Russian Imperial, but it's definitely got some of the roastiness you expect of that sort of sub-style, to be honest. But I mean, we can talk about the sub-styles all day and what they've done to it. The main thing is, it is a well-done beer and it tastes nice, and that's what you want, to be honest with you. That's what this whole thing is about for me. You want to taste different beers and have them test your palate a little bit. But this is a stout that's definitely on the more roasty, toasty end of the spectrum, I have to say. So yeah, how do we break the flavour of this down? What I'll say is that as soon as you take this beer in, the blueberries are very prominent in the flavour of this one. It's not so obvious in the aroma, in my mind, but they really come to the fore in the flavour of this beer. But yeah, let's start from the malt base then. Straight away with this beer, you get some really nice roasty, toasty, black malty characteristics there, and those linger all the way into the aftertaste with this one. In fact, the beer sort of dries out in the middle of your palate a little bit. On top of that, you can feel a little bit of the kind of oaky flavour coming out of it. If you move further towards the front of the palate, you go to the centre of your tongue and just move forward a little bit, that's when you'll get the more vanilla quality type qualities out of this beer. And I like how that kind of infuses into it as well. But I think the base of this Imperial Stout is quite straightforward. It's really quite roasty and toasty in my mind. In the very centre of the tongue, there's a little touch of a kind of brown sugary quality there as well. Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a kind of sweet caramel there in the middle of the palate, but it also has a little bit of that kind of toasty brown sugar as well, which is quite nice. As I say, the further you go into the aftertaste with this beer really dries out quite a bit. This is definitely roasty and toasty, like a robust porter or a Russian Imperial Stout, something like that. I really like how that goes together. To me, the sort of chocolatey notes that I was picking up in the aroma, they aren't all that obvious in here. There is a little bit of that darker, like high cocoa chocolate there. If you move out towards the edge of the palate, on top of some of these roasty, toasty qualities, there is definitely a little bit of a high cocoa chocolate there, you know, like 80-90% cocoa. But really this is quite a dry Imperial Stout for me. But the sourness, well, it's not even, I don't know if it's right to say it's sour, but the tartness that you get from the blueberries in this helps kind of balance it out a little bit. And some of the sweetness and smoothness from the vanilla too also add some really interesting dimensions in there. So yeah, I really like that about this. I mean, this is quite different to the one that I tried in their bar, right enough, but that, I mean, in fairness, that might have been the conditioning because it was straight out of the tap, but this one's definitely a drier, wetter feeling stout in my mind. But it comes across pretty nicely. I mean, if you like, for the one that this really reminds me of actually is the Raspy Engine that I had from Harveston Brewery back home in Scotland, one of my local breweries. It really reminds me of just like a blueberry version of that, to be honest, albeit this one is definitely a bit drier in the roasty, toasty, black malty qualities. So bear that in mind with this. This is really a pretty nice beer in my mind. Really well done, I have to say. So thumbs up to Spike Brewery on this one. It's not quite as complex as the other one. I said it's a bit more straight up, but you know, this is definitely a good one to release as a sort of Christmas stout, I think, and I think that was probably the intention with it. I'd love to see them have a go, if they've got this nice roasty base recipe, it'd be cool to see them have a go at doing some coffee stouts and things, because I think the malt base that they have in here would work very well with some of the different coffee beans and things like that you can get. So hopefully that's something that we see from Spike Brewery in the future. But on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got some big earthiness to this one. I mean, pardon me, I think there might be a bit of English hop in there, maybe Fugos or Bramling's Cross or something like that, because the earthiness is quite dark in this. But as you come further forward, there's a little bit of a herbal quality, and as you reach the front corners of the palate, it's a little bit floral, but the floral qualities are a little bit they're not quite as bright as you might get from American hops. I really think there might be an English hop in here, maybe as well as an American hop, but then round the very front curve of the palate, you've got a nice bit of lighter grassiness in there, and behind the front curve of the tongue, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters start to push their way out of the beer. When you take this beer in, you're going to notice in that fruity area you get the tartness from the blueberries right away, but it does kind of fade away a little bit, and you just are left with a wee bit of juiciness there on the tongue as well. But you'll notice that also around the front edge of the palate. Whenever you add fruit into a beer, it always kind of suppresses a little bit of the IBU and the green side of the hops, and it comes out on the front side of the tongue in my experience. But you do have some fruits from some fruity esters coming out of the hops in this beer too. So yeah, when you take it in, blueberries straight away, they very quickly smoothen out and become a little bit more juicy. But to me, this beer comes across as being quite figgy, and also blackberry-ish and blackcurranty. I mean, Probably the figs, I'm not sure about figgy, to be honest with you. It probably is a little bit more blackberry-ish and blackcurranty, and that really lingers into the aftertaste as well. And it's unusual how this one makes its transition, because when you take it in, it's the blueberries and the tartness of the blueberries, then it becomes quite blackberry-ish and blackcurranty, but then you start to get a wee touch of a raisiny sharpness almost on the very tip of your tongue the further that you go into the aftertaste, but the juiciness of the blackberries and blackcurrants really lingers there, along with a little bit of that kind of blueberry note as well. When you go further into the aftertaste, you're going to feel the back of your palate, the roasty black malts really start to come out of this one. If you go to the front corners of your palate and move in, you'll start to get woody, sort of woody oaky undertones out of this one, and there's also a wee touch of the vanilla linger in there as well. So towards the front of the palate it's a bit more sweet in the middle, and then at the very front it's a bit more juicy and fruity, but then towards the back it's quite a roasty, toasty stout, this one. So it's got a really nice balance, and it's got a little bit of everything that you would want. The sides of your palate where the hops come out are a little bit smoother, but you do have that little bit of bitterness in there that you would expect of the style. So I mean, overall I think it's fair to say this is a stout that's on the more roasty, toasty end of the spectrum, but it is very, very nice, and it's definitely worth trying if you get the chance. I think this is a good way to introduce their stouts into Systembolaget, of course, but on the basis of this one, I think it would be really nice to see them try some coffee stouts, so hopefully that's something that we see from Spike Brewery sometime soon. In terms of the mouthfeel then, I'd say this one, it's at the top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. Carbonation's really smooth. It does lean towards the oily end of the spectrum, but like I said, this beer has a lot of dryness to it. In terms of bitterness and things, hoppy bitterness, I think you're talking about 70 IBUs with this beer. It's somewhere in that kind of region. It does have a good degree of bitterness, both from some of the earthy qualities of the hops and from the more roasty black malt notes that are in there. But it's also got a very nice it's also got some really nice kind of fruity, juicy qualities to it. It's a little bit tart in the beginning, but a little bit more kind of oily in the aftertaste as well. You've got a little bit of sweetness out of it and some smoothness in there, but mainly this is quite a dry, roasty, toasty Imperial stout, of course. But it is very nice, and I think this is a good introduction to the Imperial stouts from Spike Brewery, and hopefully we see more through Systembolaget, of course. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. A really interesting beer, and definitely cool to review my first Imperial stout from Spike Brewery as well. Cool to return to these guys after quite a wee while. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one then. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Spike Brewery. You will see me review their Porter release from January of 2020 quite soon, and for the moment it's been very cool to review this one for you. I love the space artwork on this as well, since I'm an astrophysicist by trade. But yeah, thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. The Aurora, an 11% Imperial Stout, how do you say it, an oak-aged blueberry vanilla Imperial Stout to be precise, from Spike Brewery in the Gamlestaden area of Gothenburg here in Sweden. Until the next time, Slange just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Slange, skål, cheers.